So today we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. How do we know that two lines are parallel? So two lines are parallel, like the example I gave on the start of our notes for today, if they do not intersect each other. So all the lines I just drew are parallel because they never cross. They're also at the same slant, which means they must have the same slope. Because they're at the same slant, they'll never intersect each other, so they must have the same slope. So look at our example. What is the slope of a line parallel to x minus y equals -3? Well, in order to determine if a line is parallel, you have to first find the slope. And in order to find the slope, if we look at that equation, we can't tell it right off because we need to put it in y equals mx plus b form. That allows us to see the slope real easily. It's whatever's next to the x. So let's get y by itself. I have x minus y equals -3. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Negative y equals -x minus 3. And then divide by that -1 to get y all by itself. So that y equals x plus 3. So that's our equation that goes with that line. We want to know what is the slope that is parallel. Well, what is the slope of this line? Right, it's 1 because there's a 1 in front of the x. So the slope is 1 of that line. If it's parallel, it has the same slope. So it must also be 1. Okay, so find your original slope, and then if they're parallel, they must have the same slopes. Let's look at perpendicular lines. How do we know two lines are perpendicular besides the fact that they make a 90-degree angle? Well, you'll notice that their slopes are opposite of each other. So we can say that they have opposite. So one's positive, one's negative. They also are reciprocal slopes. So opposite means opposite signs, positive and negative. Reciprocal means you take a fraction and you flip it over. Okay, so if I give you a fraction, which is what slope is normally expressed as, you just take it and flip it. Let's try an example. What is the slope of a line perpendicular to 3x plus 4y equals 8? Well, before I can find the slope of the perpendicular line, I've got to find the slope of this line. And again, we do that by solving for y. Minus 3x minus 3x. 4y equals -3x plus 8. And divide by 4. I'm dividing, that way I get the y all by itself. Y equals -3/4 x plus 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so now we can clearly see our slope right here is -3/4. And that's what that slope is. But if it's perpendicular, we just said they have to be opposite and reciprocal. What's the opposite of -3/4? Positive 3/4. Then reciprocal means to flip. So I'm going to flip my fraction over. So 4 is on top and 3 is on the bottom. And those are perpendicular just because they have opposite reciprocal slopes. The y-intercept doesn't matter at all. It's just the slopes that you're concerned about with parallel and perpendicular lines. Let's do some examples where you guys have to state whether lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Again, the main focus is the slope. So as we look at example A, x equals 6. What kind of line is that? Right, if it's x equals 6, it's a vertical line. Remember from your Algebra 2 days, x equals 6 is a vertical line. Okay, there's no y, so I don't need to worry about it. 4y equals 10. Let's get y by itself by dividing by 4 on both sides, so that y equals 10 over 4. Okay, that one, since it's a y equals, it would look something like this, passing through the y-axis. Okay. Then you'll notice that if I pair those two lines together, so here's my axis, there's the y equals 10 over 4, and here's the x equals 6. They are perpendicular to each other. So these two lines are perpendicular. Because where they cross, they make a 90-degree angle. Let's go ahead and try B. 3x plus 4y equals 5 and 6x plus 8y equals 9. In order to determine if they're parallel or perpendicular, we need to find their slopes. Well, I can't tell the slope just by looking at the equations. I've got to solve for y. That way we get it in that y equals mx plus b form. Because then you can see the slope real easily. So the first one, 3x plus 4y equals 5. I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x to both sides just to move it over. 4y equals negative 3x plus 5. And divide both sides by 4 to get the y all by itself. So that y equals negative 3/4 x plus 5/4. Okay, that equation is solved for y. Let's go do the exact same thing to the next one. 6x plus 8y equals 9. Again, I'm going to solve for y. Minus 6x to both sides, so that 8y equals negative 6x plus 9. And then divide everything by 8 to get the y all by itself. Negative 6/8, I'm going to reduce that just because slope is a lot easier to do if it's reduced. Negative 6/8, you can divide both by 2 to get negative 3/4x. And 9/8 cannot reduce, so we're just going to leave it. Now I look at my two equations. What is the slope of the first one? Right, negative 3/4. What's the slope of the second one? Right, negative 3/4. Because their slopes are the same, these lines are parallel. They're parallel to each other, never going to cross. Let's go find the last one. 5y equals 2x. So again, I'm going to solve for y. Divide both sides, 5y equals 2x. Divide both sides by 5 to get y all by itself. Y equals 2/5 x. Okay, that one's done. Let's go do the next one. 3/4 x minus y equals 0. 3/4 x minus y equals 0. I'm going to subtract 3/4 x to move it to the other side. Then I'm left with negative y equals negative 3/4 x. To make that a positive y, I'm going to change it by dividing by a negative, which makes it positive, and divide that one by a negative. So as we look at our slopes here, this one is 2/5, that one's 3/4. Are they the same? No, they are not. So they're not parallel. Are they opposite reciprocals? No. They're both positive, so they're definitely not opposites, and they're not reciprocals because they're not flipped of each other. So these lines are neither perpendicular or parallel. They're just going to cross somewhere, we don't know where, but they're just going to cross somewhere. Okay, let's go try some more wherever we're actually applying what we know about parallel and perpendicular lines and linear relationships. It says, write the equation of a line passing through the given point and parallel or perpendicular to the given line. Write in slope-intercept form. Remember slope-intercept form? Y equals mx plus b. So that's what we want our final answer to be in. Let's see what we're given. I know an x, I know a y, which is good. But do I know the slope? No, I don't. But I know it has to be parallel to this one, which means it must have the same slope as that line, 2x plus y equals 7. So let's go find the slope of that line. To get the y by itself, I'm going to subtract 2x to both sides to get y equals negative 2x plus 7. So what is my slope? Right, the negative 2. So I know m has to be negative 2, and because they are parallel, they have the same slope. Now that I've got my slope and my point, I can go plug them into my equation. Those are the two pieces you must have for slope-intercept form. A point and the slope to be able to find the y-intercept. My y is 4. My slope I said was negative 2. And the x they gave me was 3. 4 equals negative 2 times 3 is negative 6 plus b. Add 6 to both sides. So 10 equals b. Now I can put the pieces together. Y equals, my slope was negative 2x. My y-intercept I just found was b. And that is the equation of a line parallel. How do we know they're parallel? Because they have the same slopes and passing through that point, 3, 4. Let's try another one. On the next one, you'll notice it's the same kind of instructions, but the difference is we're given a different point, 2/3, a different equation, but also we're looking for a line that's perpendicular to the given line. Okay? So recall, for something to be perpendicular, they must be opposite and reciprocal or flipped slopes. So first I need to go find the slope of my line. 4x minus y equals 5. 4x minus y equals 5. Let's go find the slope. Minus 4x to both sides. So you have negative y equals negative 4x plus 5. If you flip this order like I've been doing on these problems, make sure to keep the signs with the number. Even when you flip the order, the sign moves with it. So again, to divide by negative 1, to make the y positive, negative 4 divided by negative 1 is 4x. 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. So that's my line. What's the slope? 4. If it's perpendicular, we're looking for a slope that is opposite and a reciprocal of the one that was given to us. So let's see, m. If I take my given slope and change it to its opposite, instead of positive, now it's negative. And instead of 4 over 1, it's 1 over 4. Okay, so they're opposite signs, and then I flip my fraction. Now I've got my slope and my ordered pair. I can go find y equals mx plus b, because I've got two pieces I can plug in. 3 equals negative 1/4 is my x for 2 plus b. Now I'm going to solve. 3 equals negative 1/4 times 2 is negative 2/4. Or you could just say negative 1/2, either one, plus 2/4 to both sides. You can use a calculator here if you want to, but you should get 7 equals b. So using my y-intercept that I found and my slope that I found above, we can put them together to get our y-intercept and slope-intercept equation. Y equals, my slope I said was negative 1/4, x, the y-intercept was 7. And that is written in slope-intercept form. How do we know those lines are perpendicular? Right, because their slopes were opposite and they are reciprocals of each other, just like that note said.